I'm not going to tell you not to be.
All right.
But I am sure you guys are going to do great.
Oh my God, when I came on and I saw the other two, I was like, okay, they look like how I feel. It's good.
Well, just be ready because you know
Yes.
somebody's excited.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Lamb.
I woke up early today. I was so excited.
Oh no. Your excitement may be a little bit different than ours, I'm sure.
Oh,
Look at Helen's face.
oh.
Yes.
I'm just harmless. What are y'all talking about?
Well, if it helps, I'm a little nervous for you.
I said that doesn't help.
Dr. Lamb, I have a message for you.
Uh-oh.
Dr. Lanier told me to tell you hello.
How's she doing?
She's doing great. Yep, she's doing great.
Well, it's good to hear from her. She was our doctoral student 1,000,000 years ago. Of course, she wouldn't say it was that long ago. Then she worked with us for a little while.
Yeah.
Back in the day, she did a little bit of work for us, and so I hope she's doing well.
She is. Yep, she's doing very well. Yeah. When I told her you were my instructor this term, she said, "Oh, tell Dr. Lamb I said hello." I said, "I'll tell her." Yeah.
She's good people.
She really is. She is.
Good. She's good. All right. And so I'm looking over all of my notes here, making sure I've got everything together. What time is it? It's not quite time yet. So, Dr. Maraglia, this place in Gastonia.
Yes, sir.
Do you have to be a member of a healthcare group?
No, sir, you do not.
And what is their priority? I mean, just.
I think they're basically like Atrium Health is Caramont.
Yeah.
And if you go and create an account, then you can schedule an appointment.
Okay.
Because that's what I did.
Yeah. I hadn't been able to get one with Atrium yet.
Me either. The first one I could get was April 24th. And one of my former teachers let me know today about this one. And I went on and was able to get something for next Thursday. And there were a lot available Thursday and Friday.
Well, that's right now.
Right. That's why I really don't want you to wait.
And but I mean, when I say there's plenty of appointments right now, that I have a sneaking suspicion that all of those will be canceled. Because I was just watching, I turned it on specifically to see this. The storms across the country have delayed delivery of the vaccine. None of the people that make vaccine have delivered any this week already. And so that's going to be a problem when next week rolls around.
That is true.
Show up next week. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to get an appointment. But it's just understanding that that's going to be an issue.
No, eat it.
Wait, I need to go and do my other thing. I hate doing it like this. I need to be on my computer.
All right. You'll have to unmute yourself to get started. I've muted this. I've got 7 o'clock. Let's get started. Welcome. This is MELS 603. Appreciate you joining me this evening. It's week 6. I can't believe we've already gotten this far along. And so let me try and get some of these things over here. I've got some notes from this week, some shout outs. Christopher said in one of his responses from what we talked about last week, that they moved discipline away from the office in his school, so that's a good idea. Shalise, in one of her responses, in her AP interview said that, you know, she had concluded that due process is not quick. That is correct. Evan, if Evan is with us, I like the notion that Evan pointed out foreseeability, and I want to talk about that one in just one second. And then congratulations to Brad, who was the first to complete the OMA this semester and turned it in. And tell him what score you got.
I got a 4, but thank you. But Dr. Lamb helped me through the process, so kudos to him too.
Well, thank you. It's almost like I do this for a living. But as I've said, if you had a better instructor, y'all would be doing great. All right, let's talk about foreseeability quickly. That is one of the standards when you go to court that they will hit you with on negligence claims. Remember, negligence has 3 parts: mispractice, malpractice, non-practice, or feasance. You can interchange. So malpractice has each of those: mis, non, and malfeasance. But the part that they're going to get you on too, the standard that they're going to get, you know, and when you go to court, they hit you with arbitrary and capricious. But one of the big things that they hit you with, kind of an overarching thing when you go to court, is foreseeability. Now, United States law is based on English common law and what was known as the common man standard. In more modern times, we call it the common or reasonable person standard. Back in the day, it was common man or reasonable man, and now it's reasonable person standard. Is, would a reasonable person be able to foresee that that would be a problem? And that's in a lot of negligence claims in terms of malpractice or mispractice or non-practice or feasance, as you might use. Could you tell that that might be a problem? For example, somebody said, and I won't point out who, in one of their facilities inventories, that they have a problem with some of their outside doors closing or locking. I'd get on that right away. That would be easy to foresee that somebody might come into your building. If your outside door lock doesn't work and you went to court and somebody said, did you know that the outside door wasn't working? Well, yeah. Did you not think that that might be a safety issue? Well, yeah. Well, what did you do about that? Well, I put it on the list of something we ought to think about fixing later on down the road. I mean, you know, that's a pretty easy example. I told you the story. I visited this new modern middle school. It's been a few years back. One of the first ones that was built in the state, you know, as a result of active shooter drills. And I mean, it was like a fortress, except the loop that I drove in the driveway to get to the parking lot went right by the playground, no fence. I mean, I drove within literally 15 feet of children on the playground. Would you not be able to foresee that that might be a problem? That somebody could drive right up to kids with no fence, no nothing, in a vehicle, roll the window down and shoot, or roll the window or open the door and have a kid in the vehicle and be gone within literally 15 seconds. You know, I thought that was, you know, a terrible design, and that if anything happened at that school, that the foreseeability there was, I mean, just drive up and look. A door that doesn't close, you know, a rusty nail hanging out in a piece of wood that kids walk by. I mean, things like that. I mean, these are concrete examples, but that's one of the things. And what they're going to hit you on negligence is, did you not think if you only had 2 people in the cafeteria with 300 kids, that might be a problem? Well, yeah, a reasonable person might think that, yeah, that's true. And so thanks to Evan for bringing that up in his post this week. That is one of the legal standards that they will hit you with in court in a negligence lawsuit. Could you have foreseen this or foreseen that this might happen? That you were neglectful of this situation, you know, basically non-feasance. You saw something, you didn't bother to fix it. You had no malice in your heart, but you couldn't foresee that this was going to be a problem. Yeah, they'll get you. And even though you had nothing to do with that, and you don't run the maintenance department, you know, you put a work order in, but they didn't get around to it or whatever. No, they'll get you as well. And so here's kind of my takeaway on that for you. When you have your Christmas parties, whenever we're back in the building and times come to normal, whenever you have shirts printed up for the faculty, whenever you order chicken from Price's Chicken Coop, and some of you will know where that is. When you do that, who should you include in that group? That would be all the maintenance people that work at your building. Because a lot of these negligence claims are going to come over things like that. You know, broken this, not working, not operating that, physical things that there's no argument in court. This door didn't close. That window was broken. This didn't happen. You know, that's not what's at debate here. And so I know that sounds a little bit sneaky or underhanded, or you know, I'm telling you, the maintenance people on facilities are your friends. And that's generally, a lot of the negligence lawsuits come out of issues where kids get hurt on your campus based on lack of maintenance or general upkeep. That's a big part of that financial responsibility. And even though you may not have a toolbox and can fix it yourself, if you have a good working relationship with the people who do, there's a lot better chance that they will fix the problems that you have and help you with those things. So thank you again, Evan, for pointing that out in your answer this week. Again, the standard is foreseeability, or what's known as the reasonable person standard when you go to court. All right, it's time for our case study. I've taken enough time. Who's our first group? And I'll share my screen. You can do your presentation. Let's get rolling.
We'll go first.
All right. So I'm going to go to, excuse me, participants. I have made LaQuisha the host. You can now share your screen. I'm going to stop my video, which helps you be able to get on. You can now share your screen.
Yes.
And let me get my notes.
Mr. Lamb, can you allow Miss Adams and my team to share her screen?
I can change it to whoever.
Thank you.
All right, so let me go back to
Dr. Lamb.
participants. I have to reclaim the host.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb.
All right, let's see who we got here.
Dr. Lamb, I already had that ability.
Yeah, I opened it up, but sometimes it won't let you do PowerPoints unless you're the host.
Oh,
But we can try it. Go right ahead.
yeah, I'm doing it.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. Our group members are Tamara Adams, Michelle Coleman, Joy O'Neill, and myself, LaQuisha Wilkins. And in case study 1, the problem in this case study is determining if the consequence of the student receiving a failing grade is substantiated for the infraction of plagiarism. In looking at arbitrary and capricious with regards
Can
to
you
this.
hold up a second? We can't, we've got a blank screen.
Uh-oh, I'm moving too fast. My apologies.
Now we have no screen.
Yeah, I'm starting over. I'm sorry. You
My
said
apologies, Adams.
it's fine.
Do I need to start from the top, ma'am?
No, we just need to be able, there we go. All right, let's go.
Okay. The statement of the problem again is the problem in this case study is determining if the consequence of the student receiving a failing grade is substantiated for the infraction of plagiarism. In looking at arbitrary and capricious, with consideration to sustaining that the punishments be appropriate to the circumstances and offenses, the proper course of action addressing arbitrary and capricious is to determine if 1, the infraction fails to use thoroughness to decide which facts are admissible to making a decision, 2, fails to consider all facts that are relevant, and 3, establishes actions based on a conclusion that would not be reached by reasonable individuals. And to ensure that this is not the factor, we must follow procedural due process and have it carried out in a fair manner. Parents and students must be provided the proper notice of A, the infraction that the child has plagiarized, B, policy review, because you can't automatically feel that because a teacher had signed paperwork in August that a parent signed paperwork in August that parent, even the teacher or the student, has actually reviewed. We all know that oftentimes people don't read before signing. So it's just to state back, this is the policy review, and notify them of their rights. Parents and students have rights. Sometimes they don't know that, but just being transparent in that part of the process.
So next we looking at the due process, and we're looking at substantive, which is requiring the roles and policies are fair. So in this situation, the policy is the student can fail the class itself if the student cheats. The principal should make sure the policy reads fairly. And in doing so, as it reads, the student was caught by the teacher, and the teacher would like to fail the student based on the policy. As the policy is written, it is fair. For this situation, the policy is not complete.
Okay, let me stop you right there. You've misinterpreted what the case said. You've misread that. The case does not say that you can fail the class if you're guilty of plagiarism. It says you may receive a failing grade on the assignment. It's a big difference. That goes to the heart of your argument, which is capricious.
Right.
However, the assignment is 50% of your grade.
Okay, now again, all right, let's follow that argument on out. Is it legal to make one class assignment 50% of your grade? More than 50%.
No, because the policy said you can't do that though, right?
Well, let's follow this argument logically here. All right, we're looking at the standards of arbitrary and capricious. All right, first of all, the policy says that the student can receive a failing grade on the assignment. All right, how much then does the assignment count? All right, so is it legal by state policy in either North or South Carolina? Is it legal for a one class assignment to count more than half of the student's yearly grade?
No,
No, it's
not
not
legal at all.
No.
That would be no. And then we have to go there to our code of conduct for the district that outlines what the punishment would be for plagiarism. Even if we decide to give the kid a failing grade, the punishment can be no more than in-school suspension. Because you fail the kid for the year, you have in effect excluded that student for a whole year. You have excluded them. They can't enter into the 9th grade until the year following. Next year they have to repeat the 8th grade, or they can sit out for the whole year, but they can't. You have excluded that child for a year. So in effect, what you have done by making, by interpreting, but the teacher has done by interpreting the student may fail the assignment as, well, I'll just make the assignment count more than half the yearly grade. You have an effect for an infraction that carries a maximum penalty of in-school suspension. You have expelled a student for an entire year. So there's the heart of your problem.
Yeah, because the student wouldn't have the ability to even raise the grade up for any other work that they do, correct?
That's correct.
Right.
So what we have to follow here is, so now we have an understanding of the problem. The
Right.
student, the policy did not allow for a failing grade for the year or for the class. It only allowed for a failing grade on the assignment. Now, we go to state grading policy. The most that it can count is the state final exam or end of grade or in a course.
20%.
The most that it can count is 30%. That's the most that any one thing can count is 30%. And it counts between, it can't count less than 20 or more than 30. All right, and then you have your teacher made test, your district assessments, they can count up to 30 more. And then you have in-class assignments, which can count up to 30 more. And then out-of-class assignments can't count more than 10% on the grade. So if you have regular out-of-class assignments, this one particular assignment should not by my calculation, couldn't have counted more than 1% of the final grade. And the teacher said, this one out of class assignment counts more than 50% of the grade. So therein, you see, we keep compounding error on error on error in this case.
Right.
And but we have to track it back to what did the policy say on plagiarism to begin with? What's the penalty? What's our grading policy? Because according to North Carolina General Statute 115C288A, who in effect at the end assigns the grade in any teacher's class?
The principal.
The principal does.
Mhm.
So
The
when
prin-
this comes to you, this is how you would track this.
Okay.
When this landed on your desk, you wouldn't factor in who Bobby is or who Bobby's daddy or uncle is or any of those things. You would start tracking this. All right, this is what happened. Bobby has admitted that. That's not in debate here that he did it. All right, so what is the maximum that he can be given? What should we do in terms of restorative justice to let Bobby make it up, for him to learn a lesson? How much should this count? How should this affect his grade? All of those kinds of things, that's the legal piece that you would work through, not who Bobby's uncle is.
Yeah, we don't care because we discussed that as a group. We didn't care who was his uncle or daddy or anyone was.
Yeah.
Doesn't even
Yeah,
matter.
that's immaterial.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves due process. All right,
Yeah.
continue.
So now that we have a better understanding of the policy and what it was reading. So in other words, through our investigation for the policy itself, one, we cannot fail the student. Two, we have to let the teacher know what the policy actually says because it's important to help the teacher as well understand what it reads. Correct? So we're gonna move on. Joy?
What would have already been your legal responsibility as a principal in terms of in the faculty handbook? I've got two principals sitting here tonight. You notice if we went back to my screen, and we won't, I'll just tell you, I've got the Gardner Webb grading policy in our class shell, and I've also got the points and what everything counts in here as well. What do you suppose are in all faculty handbooks in all public schools? It has the district grading policy in it.
I was going to say the grading policy.
Now,
I was
so
going back and reviewing that.
we've made, again, we have been very kind people to assume that the teacher doesn't know the policy. This is not a beginning teacher. This is a veteran teacher. To say that we need to make sure she knows the policy, we've already done that. We can't know what's in somebody's heart. All we can know is what they did. If you got a veteran teacher who doesn't know the grading policy, you've got bigger issues in this particular case. So my working assumption, and I'm not a good person, you've already figured that out. My working assumption is that the teacher knew the grading policy and decided to ignore it. What are you gonna do now, hero?
Right, because she's upset. So her emotion is.
Now, pardon my language, but now we have to, part of the parameters of this case is we all have to understand from the very beginning, and again, pardon my language, that Bobby is a turd. But that's not supposed to factor into due process either. But we acknowledge that Bobby's a turd. He's a pain in our behind. But we don't just make the rules for the kids that behave and we like. Due process covers everybody. And so we acknowledge that Bobby is not, he knows his uncle's on the school board. He knows how much money they put in the school. And he knows that he's an athlete and he gets, he probably gets privilege already. But he knows those things. And so I'm sure that this is not the first time that Bobby's done something that's, less than ideal. But, kind of goes back to the Bible, the least of us, you do unto me. And so, if we can't just extend grace and due process to the kids, the good kids. We have to do it to the kids that don't act very well either.
If I can
Right
add,
ahead.
also, the case study didn't say that he had other infraction and things of that nature. It didn't say that, we can't insinuate when you're dealing with children, you can't insinuate on what it is if it's not written and it's not there and it states specifically what they've done. Hence, the due
That's,
process
but
is also
to my point exactly is, even if Bobby had been the worst kid in the building, it doesn't matter. He gets the same due process as everybody else. And that's why I said, I'll acknowledge if somebody wants to argue that Bobby's been a pain in her side the whole year, okay. But that doesn't matter. We don't know that, or even if we assume that he has been, it's immaterial. We still have to give everybody due process. I've had a lot of folks say, well, you know, Bobby's been, well, okay, so Bobby's been bad all year. And that doesn't matter. We don't just give due process to the kids that have played along all year and not to the ones that have been bad. So that's the argument. I am making your argument that even if he were bad, it wouldn't matter. We don't know that he was bad, but even if he was, I'll concede. All right, Bobby's been bad. But that doesn't mean you don't do due process with Bobby just because he's been bad.
Because the only time that matters, because Dr. Lamb, the only time that matters is if he did this before, the same situation.
That and even then, even if it's a repeat infraction and we don't know that, again, that would only move us up one level, and he could get up to 3 days out of school, even if this was his second offense. In nobody's world does an assignment that, again, back to that foreseeability, what does a reasonable person think? And in nobody's world does a reasonable person think that excluding a kid from school for a whole year over assignment that counts 1 point of the yearly total makes any sense at all. And it has anything to do with justice, care, critique, profession, the ethics of what we're doing here. And so these are arguments that you have to work through. Why did the teacher do what she did? Did she not know what the policy was? Well, we know that the policy is made plain at the beginning of every year in the faculty handbook. We do know that that's a standard in the business. So the notion that we need to inform her, yes, but we need to be careful not to say, well, she just didn't know. We don't know if she did or didn't. All we can know is what she did. We can't know what was in her heart. All we can know is this is what she did. All right, continue.
So as far as the due process procedural, it's important for the principal to follow the guidelines as it pertains to due process. The principal should be knowledgeable concerning procedures of due process. And then the steps that the principal should take is to talk with both the student and teacher concerning the situation to get both sides of the story. Have the student write a statement concerning what happened. So that way you have proper documentation, mediate a conversation between the student and teacher. That's the restorative piece of it, to allow the student to discuss his thoughts on the situation as well as the teacher. So that way you can kind of come up with a decision on, following how we would proceed as far as in the classroom. Based on the handbook, provide the consequence, which could be, a failing grade, or as you stated, in-school suspension. And then if the student provides, reasoning for the behavior, possibly provide the student with the opportunity to recover the grade with a maximum score that's decreased from, 100%. So I just wrote 80, but it could be, anything that is decided between the principal, teacher, and student. But the main thing is that you want the student to be learning. So that's part of the restorative practice. And it also provides the student the opportunity to reach proficiency and mastery in the skill that the teacher was trying to teach.
The whole point of the out of class assignment to begin with is we're interested in that the kid learn whatever the assignment was for. We don't just assign things for the grade that they bring. The grade is the byproduct. The outcome is what we're interested in, is the project that he did. The only thing I'd say on this slide, make sure the slide says a failing grade on the assignment.
Okay.
The issue, that's kind of the crux of the whole case, is failing grade on the assignment versus failing grade in the class. And there was a manipulation by the teacher in this case, where one assignment that should have counted 1 point out of 100 for the year counted more than 50 points. And see, that's what you have to make sure that when you're working with the teacher as well. We want to do restorative justice with the student, make sure that they got their due process. But when we're working with that teacher, we want to be clear. You have the right to fail him on the assignment. What you don't have the legal right to do is manipulate the value of that assignment. We, as the state and the district, and then the extension of that is the school, sets the grading policy. You don't have the right to ignore or overpower that policy and put your policy in place that says this one out of class assignment counts more than half of the yearly grade for this entire class. You do not have the legal right. You have violated state policy, local board policy, and our administrative practice here at this school. You have created these three problems. That Bobby cheated on the test, we'll work with Bobby. We'll do, due process with Bobby, restorative justice. We'll give him a day of in-school suspension, but we'll let him make up, and for a partial grade, the assignment. If you don't want him to make it up, why'd you assign it to begin with? If it's not worth making up, why'd you bother assigning it? Was it just a filler activity to get you from point A to point B? Then why were you trying to count at 51 or more % of his final grade? If it's not worth making up, why was it worth assigning to begin with? And why did you feel so passionately about it that it would count more than 50% of his grade? Those are the kind of critical conversations you have to have with the teacher. Because this really boils down to is you as the administrator, and the teacher, that conversation that you've got to have, why that teacher felt the need to do this. This is also, by the way, a violation of federal law. I forgot to tell you that part. Zero tolerance. You can't exclude a kid for a year without due process. That's what's known as zero tolerance policies. Those are illegal, by the way, according to the Office of Civil Rights, been adjudicated in federal court. So you have violated, what the teacher has done is violated federal OCR law. That's Office of Civil Rights. Violated state law and how much any one thing could count toward the student's final grade. Violated local board policy on giving a 1 year exclusion when the maximum could be at this point would be a 1 day out of school suspension. And you have violated the school's administrative, the blue pages as we call them, administrative policy for the school and following the student handbook. You have violated all four. And so what you have to have a critical conversation with is the teacher. We can fix Bobby pretty easily here, but the bigger issue is the teacher in this case. All right, continue.
All right. When looking at justice in this case study, justice is a paradigm that may have an influence on the decision, and it should be considered. Consideration must be given to that which is fair to the student. Is retaining the student a just consequence? Is there another punishment that would be a better option? As Ms. O'Neill Joy had stated, restorative practices. We are having a big push on restorative practices and RTI methods, and even the MTSS process. We have to really look at, is this a just punishment, and ensure that the actions of the school has not demonstrated failure, and considering all the facts, which goes back to the arbitrary and capricious piece of it. Being thorough in determining which facts to consider, being reasonable. Does this infraction fit the consequence? As my other colleagues had stated, it is necessary to ensure that the decision is fair and just. And I want to add, it's my belief that if I would consider the student's discipline history, the first thing I would do is to consider the student's discipline history. The case study shares that the student's dedication to his sports, that will lead me to believe that within that, I will have to consider that if the student is faced with losing the privilege of, he's going to be more apt to go in a survival mode, which is going to have him tackle this in a desperate manner, hence submitting his brother's work. I believe that restorative practice can be used in a situation as it is teachable moment And the student may need to be supported in learning about the student's code of conduct and what violating it can be a result of. And many students are involved in infractions and oftentimes do not know why they're receiving punishments. They are just receiving them. There should be a consequence to support the fairness of the entire student body. Is what you're giving the student what you're going to give everyone else? And it shouldn't be justified. It can't be based on the monetary gain that the school is receiving from the student's family. At that point, it's unethical and must have a sound due process, as this will definitely be an area of close scrutiny by your legal personnel that will be involved. So.
I guess that means no comment behind that slide. Okay. We were looking at care, and under care in this situation, in relation to this case, care can be considered, because I was looking at the fact that when we're looking at the student side of it, and as Ms. Wilkins mentioned, looking at his background of discipline, but understanding what is more, important to him is the sports, that he did it to complete the project. May not be necessary to use, but the principal can consider the connection to the student and offer support to the student, as well encourage the teacher to do the same thing and not be so quick to want to fail the student. He may feel pressure while doing the sport and school. The policy is the student may be failed in the class, but it's still up to the principal as to how this is handled. The principal cannot have a loyalty to the parent or guardian or the uncle, but stick to the policy and make a decision from there.
While reading and analyzing case study 1 in the critiquing process, we questioned due process, fair, and just practices. However, we asked, if Bobby was not an athlete, would his case have been presented to the dean, principal, or superintendent? If Bobby's uncle did not play an intricate part in influencing the politics of school and county sports, would they have not proceeded with caution? If this is Bobby's first or only offense, why is it handled with such severity? 1 second, I had to move this. Policy and procedure could still be upheld without the infraction being so severe. There are other resolutions other than failing Bobby. He could be made to write the paper over, take points off for turning the paper in late. He could be benched at games. And lastly, he could have been given a warning of any of the above sanctions. And that's just the critiquing of what we read.
So as far as profession, as a principal, there were several different elements that go under profession. As far as the accountability to student and academic social success, the principal needs to make a decision that ensures student gains the skills needed to be successful on the project, and needs to ensure that the student still has a positive social experience while holding him accountable. So I put no ostracizing. You never want to ostracize the student to the point where it changes their social status and their group or with their peers or in the environment. Model principles of self-awareness, reflective practice, transparency, and ethical behavior. The principal's decisions should align with the district ethical standards and policies. The principal should be transparent in what the process is and what policies need to be followed or have been broken. The principal should also be aware of any personal biases and be reflective on how he handled the situation to know if it was adequate or if there was something that could be followed for the next time he may be faced with the situation. As far as the safeguard values of democracy, equity, and diversity, the question that I posed was, would you follow the same principles and procedures for all students in this particular situation, regardless of gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and in this case, who he knows or who he's related to? And then you would also provide the student opportunity to voice his opinion / reality. Consider and evaluate potential and legal consequences of decision-making. If policies and procedures are followed and student and parent sign saying they understood, there's a minimal legal consequence. The legal consequence would come if the principal were to give consequences based on who he is related to or not follow the written policy or procedure or the code of conduct. As far as the best interest of the student, him learning from the choice that he made, helping him to have an opportunity to make the situation right, and then providing him an opportunity to learn the standard or the learning intention. So meet mastery on that particular assignment, and then allowing the student to take responsibility for his actions.
Very good.
Conclusion, one could conclude that the wiggle room created flexibility through policy and procedure. Policy and procedure does give teachers the ability to feel a student for cheating. However, the principal has the authority to explore other resolutions. The dean can support the teacher and enforce the policy, or can go against the teacher by creating an alternative solution, which supported the uncle and the political views that often plague our school system. In order to ensure the teacher feels supported, it is imperative that you consider and address the teacher's feelings and viewpoints so that the teacher feels supported and valued. It is also important to come to a consensus.
Very good. All right, questions anybody has? All right, I'm going to go to our resident high school principal. Where is she? Dr. Caton, are you still with us? I guess we've lost.
I'm sorry, it takes me a little bit to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. We can't see you, but we can hear you. All right, as our resident high school principal, I'm gonna give you a chance to voice your opinion, but I'm gonna ask you a question to kick it off. What's your notion on benching a kid at a game over something that happened academically?
Absolutely not. I don't agree with that.
Not allowable in most districts. There's actually a policy that most districts have that expressly forbid you from doing that. That's not a best practice. Charlotte-Mecklenburg, it's actually written into the district manual that you can't do that. So that would be, make sure that, again, you go by the code of conduct. Code of conduct has nothing in it that says that you can bench a kid at a game.
That's double punishment for something. If you've already done something else, you've already given them punishment. But
that's called double jeopardy.
That's right, double jeopardy. And what I also say, going back to the grading, what I do as well, in addition to in my handbook, I make my teachers turn in their syllabus to me, and I make sure all that stuff is up there. Grading and policies is like it's supposed to be.
That is correct. So we have 31 folks that work for us in MELS, and we teach anywhere from 11 to 20 sections every semester, sometimes more than that. It's according to how many new ones we get and according to what cycle we're on. So like a fall when we have 8 new classes and we've got, 2 more of them. So sometimes we have as many as 30 sections of classes. Guess what everybody has to do? Everybody has to turn in their syllabus. And I have to see their grading policy. I did that when I was principal, even back, in the horse and buggy days when I was principal. But yes, we go over the grading policy because that's number one in high school. You get more issues and problems and complaints in high school over grades than everything else combined, because of college scholarships, athletic scholarships, clearinghouse issues with NCAA, grants, valedictorian, salutatorian, National Honor Society, all that stuff. The basis of all that stuff is GPA and class rank, all of it. Even programs within your district, all of it is based on grades, class rank, and GPA. And so if you don't think parents aren't watching that stuff, and that they don't, if you were to count, for example, in this case, if you were to count that class assignment for 2% rather than 1%, a parent would know it, because they calculate with the data dashboards that a lot of districts have now, they calculate their kids' GPA every day. Every day.
Dr.
And
Lamb,
so you would be crucified if you didn't know these things as a principal and a teacher. That would not go well for you.
Dr.
I'm
Lamb.
sorry.
No, I just have a question. I mean, I know you said NHS. So at a school I was at previously, a high school, we had a cheating scandal with some of our NHS members. And actually, because one of the pillars of NHS is integrity, we found that obviously they were cheated and lied, but then obviously, you know, we did some background. And so they not only cheated, but then they lied about the cheating and then finally confessed because they truly got caught. So we actually removed them from NHS, and our we were backed by everyone in the county. So because of the pillars,
That's an extracurricular activity, and students do not have a property right to extracurricular activities. So you can do that, as well as whatever you give them punishment in school. They don't have a property right to that activity. If that's one of the
I guess
pillars of that activity.
I'm sorry. I guess that's what I was saying that because I guess I misunderstood because you said like we can't because it's just based on GPA and all that. Like I'm just saying a minute ago, and so that's why I was.
No, but
Right.
my argument here is that you have no right to those things, and you have a district policy on participation. And if that policy dovetails into the policy of that organization, then yes, you can take them out of NHS if it says one of the prerequisites or co-requisites or ongoing prerequisites to be in this is that you can't have done, you can't have cheated and lied and steal, then yes, then you can take them out for that purpose. But baseball doesn't say that, neither does football or basketball. That's why we have to have referees in those games.
So again, you're saying that they cannot be benched because of something academically.
That is correct. And a lot of districts have that in their policy. Now, some districts have in their policy that kids' participation can be pulled, but you can't bench them. If you let them play, you got to let them play. That's kind of the way that works. And so you would have to check your policy. Now, while Charlotte Mecklenburg wouldn't let you bench a kid, they would let you hold out their eligibility if they'd been suspended during the time that the game was to happen. Let me say that again. A kid gets suspended on Monday for 5 days. His suspension is going to run through the following Monday. He can't play in Friday night's football game because he's suspended from school. That's not double jeopardy. But now here's where we get to splitting hairs. What if a kid gets suspended and his suspension is up? The last day of his suspension is Friday. The last day is Friday. Is he eligible to play football Friday night?
I would say no.
No.
Why? It's 5 days. It's up on Friday.
But if
It's
you were
Wednesday.
suspended on that Friday in
Or that Monday.
CMS, you are not allowed on school grounds
Until the following Monday.
until your suspension is over. And that doesn't mean Friday night. That means the next school day.
That is correct.
And technically, there is a rule with athletics that you have to be in school a certain amount of time
That day to play that
day
night.
to be able to play. So
That is correct. That's a state rule. That's
Yeah.
the North Carolina Athletic Association handbook, by the way.
That's in South Carolina too. You have to
If
be.
you didn't, exactly. If you didn't come to school that day because you were suspended, you can't play that night. And so again, you got to know the rules. Now, parents are going to know these rules.
Mhm.
And see, now here's the thing too. Not only is the parent of the kid who was suspended and you let him play that night, the kid that had to sit on the bench because he came back and played, you better believe that parent's going to know the rule. It's not going to be the other team's parents that mad that, that the star got to play. It's the kid parent who didn't get to play because that kid played. They're the ones gonna turn you in. You can believe that. My kid deserves the Friday Night Lights experience, and he didn't get it because you let this kid play who was ineligible to play because he wasn't in school that day because of a suspension. You got to know the rules here, whatever they are. Now, part of this is folks, you don't have to agree with the rules. That's not part of the function, whether you agree with them or not. But your job is to do what? Your job is to uphold them, period. And that's why I went back to this notion that of Bobby not being the best student. That doesn't matter. We have, we have to uphold the rules for everybody, whether they're the best kid in school, or maybe in Bobby's case, he might have been the best kid in school. But what if he were the worst kid in school? It doesn't matter. Our job is to uphold the rules for everybody. That's that social justice piece. That's that restorative justice piece. The right thing to do here is give Bobby his 1 day of in-school suspension, let him make the activity up for 80% of the grade and move on. But this teacher wants Bobby excluded from school for a whole year over this one out-of-class assignment. Now, I know you said, well, Dale, this is just a case study. And, they've got this thing, that's so over the top that no teacher would ever do that. I beg to differ. Joy just shook her head. Joy's like me. She knows better than that.
Would you need to go back 2 years to see if there were issues with Bobby's brother as an admin to see if there was issues with the family in order to address that with the teacher?
You can't do that. Oh, by the way, that's illegal. You can't do that. That's a violation of that of the FERPA for Bobby's brother. And you got to be careful. When you go to a due process hearing for a student, you can't, when they put a kid up for a long-term suspension or exclusion, unless it's a sexual offense where you're allowed to show a pattern, you can't bring in previous incidents in due process because they're not admissible in court.
No, I meant
and you're on
not with the student due process, like when you later are speaking to the teacher. And
no.
Okay.
We can't bring Bobby's brother into this. There's some certain rules again, and I'm probably down a rabbit hole here, but there are some certain rules that we have to. Number one is we can't adjudicate Bobby on everything that he's ever done. That's it. But a person just made a point here on the chat. If we bring Bobby's family or his brother into it, again, that may show bias, but it's also illegal. FERPA says that we can't go back and we can't just go rifling through student records just for our own edification. In a case like this, we have to adjudicate Bobby on what he's done and what he's done only. We can't even bring Bobby's own disciplinary history into this, much less that of his family, for good or for bad. We're not allowed to do that. That's excluded from due process for a reason.
And that's breaking confidentiality.
No, that's FERPA. That's exactly right. That's what FERPA is confidentiality. We hadn't covered FERPA yet. I'm sorry. That's the federal law on confidentiality.
No.
So,
I was just thinking, if you knew as the principal that something happened between Bobby's brother and the teacher, and you knew there was already a bias, and you knew there may already be there's that reason that she's wanting to fail him, that she's wanting.
Yeah, well, that's kind of I mean, if you read between the lines on the case, you can figure that out. I mean, she's went through extraordinary measures to fail Bobby. Either it's Bobby or his brother or the family, or they run roughshod over people because the uncle's on the board or whatever. But what we have to do is be able to say none of that matters. I mean, if we're looking to try to figure out why the teacher did what she did, again, I can't know what's in people's hearts. And when you go to court, we can't really figure. But all we can do is you've obviously broken federal, state, local law in order to fail Bobby. There's probably some reason behind it, but the notion here is regardless of what Bobby did to you or Bobby's uncle or Bobby's brother or whatever, you have broken all these series of laws. Now, one of the things that, you're right, Lucretia, but one of the things that I often hear is, well, the teacher, we got to support the teacher. Because if we don't support this teacher, then teachers will have this opinion that we don't support them administratively. And that goes back to the notion of when your mother said to you when you were 5 years old, that if your friend jumped off a bridge, would you jump off too? To teach you that we don't do things because other people do, or that two wrongs don't make a right kind of thing. And so when people argue that we've got to support the teacher in this case, no, we don't. No, we don't have to support the teacher in this case. Now, we can't know why this teacher did this to Bobby. Obviously, she manipulated a lot and broke a lot of rules. And she knew that she did that because she went to her union rep immediately because she knew she had done this. This wasn't, yeah, I get it, Rachel. You're exactly right. You know, how do you handle this bias with your staff? And that's what I'm talking about is, you can't just support people blindly. And maybe it would be a good idea to explore with that teacher on an individual basis why she has this bias against Bobby. But in a case of this magnitude, I would not go that route, is my point. I wouldn't go that route with this teacher. Because the teacher went to the union, did this illegal things. This is such an egregious thing that the backlash on this may be, you may be in court anyway. You know, if the teacher hadn't gone, if the teacher had come to me and said, I've got this situation with Bobby and we worked through it, but when the teacher manipulated the grading scale to more than 50% of the entire year from that one assignment and gave the failing grade without any due process and then hid behind their union, no. You've drawn the line in the sand now with me. We're only on a legal basis now. That collegial, we're going to work this out thing. No, you can't set me on fire and then expect me to, mix metaphors here to, you can't cover me in gas and expect me to hand you the match. You've already made me your adversary. And that's what happened. So that's why I wanted to follow up with my two principals. Dr. Maraglia, a teacher does this to you. What is your response in terms of personnel with this teacher?
We would be having a conversation with someone and I would not ever meet with this person alone. But it's always best practice in any kind of situation. Do not ever meet with anybody alone. Always have someone there as your witness. In
an adversarial situation. Mm-hmm. This is an adversarial situation. With
absolutely it is.
If you hadn't figured that out by now. Now, Rachel's question is should we be working with this person on about if this was a minor thing and we were trying to help this teacher learn and grow, the teacher drew the line in the sand and said, you are my adversary.
But also, that union rep knows the rules too.
That's correct.
So if the union rep could have guided her onto the correct path and said, this is really not the way you want to go. So you've got two people. It's absolutely adversarial because you've got two people who know they're in the wrong.
Yeah. But they're trying to intimidate you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to make this about you now as the principal, rather than the teacher broke all these federal, state, and local laws and local board policy. Mm-hmm. They're trying to make this about you now, and they'll gin up all that stuff on your faculty about he doesn't support teachers or she doesn't support mm-hmm. teachers. That's the first thing they'll do, and just drag you through the mud. That's the way this goes. And then it will be, it's because of Bobby's uncle. They let him off because of Bobby's uncle. That's the second thing you're gonna hear.
And one thing that's going to be a very difficult lesson as you make this transition is that you cannot always, I hate to use the word support, you cannot always defend your teachers. You will find yourself in a situation that you cannot defend something that they've done or said. And that is one of the worst situations to be in. I'm in one right now. Or I'm dealing with the aftermath of one right now because the teacher did something he knew he did wrong. And you try to keep a good face in front of the parent as much as you can, but there are sometimes you cannot defend what they have done.
Yeah. And all you can say was, well, that was a damn fool thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's all you, I mean, that's all you got left. I mean, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken manure every time.
And when I'm in those conversations, I
Here we go.
take over the entire conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I prep my teacher ahead of time, and they know when I go a certain way, they just need to shut up and just sit there and let me take over the whole conversation.
Yeah. This is a learning situation for you folks in that everybody that you have teaching for you is not going to always do the right thing.
No,
And when they make a mistake, it's not going to be because it was that they just made an honest mistake. Sometimes they did intentionally bad things. But that's a normal, think about a normal distribution of the population. We don't have a lock on having only the very best people in the school business. We're normally distributed like most large populations. We have some really good ones and some really bad ones. And this notion that I always must support the teacher every time, you got to dispel yourself of that notion tonight. And that's really the value of this case study is that you've got to know that when somebody breaks the law, you cannot support that. Nobody can ever give you permission to break the law. Now, somebody said, what about what the superintendent said? The superintendent said, be careful, because he knows that you better have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. This is a highly political situation. Make sure that everything was done correctly. He didn't say, pass Bobby, or, he said, follow up and make sure everything, due process was followed. Make sure everything was done right. If it wasn't, you better fix it. I better not be in court trying to defend you on the undefendable or indefensible. So, the walk away or the takeaway on this one is that teachers sometimes do bad things. That you cannot in any sense in terms of, is this capricious? This rivals my example from last week. You caught me smoking, took me out behind the gym and shot me. You caught Bobby cheating on a class assignment that counts 1 point, 1% of the yearly grade, and you excluded him from school for an entire year. And the law is very clear on that as well. Even if you give an alternative placement or assignment like going to summer school, it doesn't change the fact that this is a zero tolerance exclusion for a year. It's against federal law. You got to read the zero tolerance policy law as well. And it says that without due process, Bobby cheated, you gave him a year out of school. And even if you give him an alternative placement like summer school, it doesn't matter. That's still an illegal zero tolerance expulsion from school. So we can say that he cheated and he's just going to be held back for a year, but in effect, you have excluded him for a whole academic year without any due process whatsoever. That's what the teacher is asking you to support. When we sit here and talk about this, it sounds as crazy to y'all as it does to me, that a kid cheats on an out-of-class assignment and you're going to exclude him for a whole year and violate federal, state, and local board policy. But these are the kinds of things that teachers will get you into. Teachers aren't bad people. I'm married to one. Would you believe I've been married to the same woman for more than 35 years? I know that's hard for anybody to believe. And no, she's not deaf. nor blind. And I love her as much as I did the day I met her 40 years ago. And so don't say I don't like teachers, but what I am telling you is in the real world, you're going to have teachers that do these kinds of things to you.
Now, Dr. Lamb, I'm just going to tell you what I do. If I have a student, for me, if you give a student a 0, and you want me to assign something to me, I feel like that's double jeopardy too. It's one or the other for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it said the kid may receive a failing grade on that assignment. That doesn't mean you have to, that may be it. I prefer the restorative justice deal, where you let them make the assignment up, give them, I like the notion of that. And if you want to do that, then you can give them a day of in school.
Yep.
But again, I'm like Dr. Kate. Now, I don't think you ought to give them both. I think, again, they have a case for double jeopardy there. If you bring it to me, if you want to handle it and give them the 0 on the assignment, I don't think that's the best practice, but that's up to you. But if you bring it to me, if you've done that, then you bring it to me, then I'm going to say, well, we're done. Now, if you didn't do anything, this is what I would do. But now, if you give them the 0, you've already done it. Why are you bringing them to me? I got other stuff to do. It's chicken day. It's chicken Thursday in the cafeteria, and I'm late. Why are you bothering me with this? And so, and that's part of what you have to establish with teachers too. When a teacher does a referral, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, or junior high, when a teacher makes a referral to you, it's now your problem. They can't tell you what they want done or what they would do, and if they get mad about what you did, then they should have handled it themselves. But once it comes to your door, you're the one who makes the decision now. And back to what Rachel was talking about earlier, you may want to have a discussion with your teachers about their bias if they're bringing you a lot of kids, on why is this happening, and it may be a long-standing thing. But on individual discipline incidents, when you bring it to me, it's mine. But yeah, it would be a good idea that if you've got somebody that's filling your office with kids every day, to try to figure out why. That was a good point that Rachel brought up. Yeah, that you would want to find out if every day, I can't get in my office because it's full of kids that this one teacher has sent, or she's sending the same kid over and over, then that would be something I would want to talk to her. But when we're talking about dealing with a due process incident, no, this is now an adversarial thing. We've got way past, what's your problem here? Why is my office full of kids every day? We're way down the road from that. She's drawn the line in the sand now. So here's the question for the two principals before we move on. And it'll go a lot faster after this, since we've already had our discussion. Would you continue to employ this teacher? That's the question. I'll start with Dr. Kate. We'll go alphabetically. Would you continue to employ this teacher?
I think, yeah, I mean, you don't have documentation on her. You would have to start to build your documentation with her. I would have some crucial conversations with her and start some documentation. That's just me.
Okay, Dr. Maraglia.
I would have to agree, simply because I know that you cannot typically get rid of someone without an exorbitant amount of documentation. I don't know if that option would be available. I think I would talk to my learning community superintendent about the situation and see if we did have any options of maybe making a different placement.
Y'all are better people than I am. See, I would move for immediate dismissal on the grounds that she'd broken federal, state, and local board policy, and she had violated the ethics clause of her contract.
Do you think you could be successful with that?
I don't know if I could or not.
But you would try.
But I absolutely.
Okay.
For me, I've had a couple, and I know that I wouldn't have been successful. They're going to say to me, then you need to put her on a plan.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. But see, what I would have done, And see, I wouldn't have done it because of her. I would have done it because of everybody else.
Right.
And what I would say to them, this is not about retribution. This is not about scaring you. This is about protecting you as a faculty and your reputation in the community. That we do not, as a faculty, accept this and let people tar you with the brush that this person has done. And you're probably right. They probably wouldn't have let me done that, but I would have certainly made that would have been how strongly I would have reacted to this kind of a visceral response. In that when I said I was going to do this, I suspect that somebody would probably move the teacher rather than going through that, because it would become a very public fight. But now that probably would have been burning my house down, but you have to have, but I think in a case like this, I would go that far. Some other people wouldn't. But when you violate this much, you can't work for me.
Now,
Because I can't live my life as an administrator wondering what you're going to do next to get me.
And I don't have a problem with that. I just know from what I've seen working where I work that it really takes an act of God.
It does. And, and I worked there for 20 years too, but
I know.
worked 3 other places before that where it would have been gone.
and for me, they're not going to just move the teacher to another school in my county because they're going to say they don't want to move a problem to
Yeah,
another.
they don't want to pass the trash. I get it. Yeah. Yeah. But I worked in 4 districts in my career, and 3 of them, I would have had that authority in 3 of those. And 1 I wouldn't have, which was Charlotte Meg. But you have to stand for something. That's that ethics of profession. You can't allow a teacher to do this to a kid. Even if it doesn't matter if he's the best kid in the building or the worst kid in the building.
Mm-hmm.
You can't allow a teacher to do this to a kid. That's not who we are as professionals. And so it violates all the ethics, care, profession, justice, critique. It gets all of those. What this teacher did, fails on all 4 of those standards. And it failed, on all legal standards as well. And so you have to stand up for kids. And, even though it might be fighting the windmill, sometimes you have to stand up for kids. This is one that I would have said, short of some kind of sexual abuse, that this is about as bad of abuse without it being physical or sexual that you can do to a kid. It's at the heart of what we do, which is teach kids. And so that's one of those conversations. All right, who's next?
Do you,
We can
I
go
promise
next.
it'll go faster.
do you care if Helen and I go next? Because it kind of piggybacks off of what you were just
Go right ahead.
saying. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Wanted to know if we could go next because one of our team members is still at school, so she hadn't even made it home yet.
Okay.
If that's okay, I apologize,
No.
Rachel, if you don't mind, so that she can get home. Thank you much.
Okay.
Okay, good evening. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, y'all. Yes, we had basketball practice and everything else. So I'm still at school. Our group, of course, we're gonna just jump right in, piggyback off of what the other group was talking about. We'll cheat and strike Bobby out. My name is Shalise Wine. I have Ms. Tamara Rudock, Campbell, Evan Parrish, Latasha Henry Pugh, and Robbie Charles is in my group as in our group as well. All right, quick summary. Just Bobby is a student, star baseball athlete at his school. During a major project, he decided to use the work his brother completed, of course, for the same assignment 2 years ago. First of all, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so due to the project being worth more than half of the grade, of course, and we just had that conversation about it was the actual assignment that he failed the assignment, but that assignment also, it was counted way more than it should have. This particular failure requires Bobby to go to summer school. And so some of the problems that we saw, of course, which everybody I'm pretty sure saw, that the assignment is worth more than half of the student's final grade. He failed the assignment. she counted the assignment for more than the district's requirement. You know, student handbook states to maintain personal honesty, cheating of any kind may require a failing grade by the teacher. We, of course, also saw that his uncle is a prominent member of the school's Chamber of Commerce. The student, due to failing the class, will have had to attend summer school and will miss the, of course, summer baseball tournament. And the teacher and the union representative met with the principal about upholding the school's handbook on the cheating policy. These are just a couple of the problems that we saw as well. And any of my group members can also jump in if y'all want to jump in and say anything about any of the problems. Good. All right.
Okay, so we thought, hi everyone. So we thought that in order to address this problem, we really had to look at the substantive and the procedural due process. And based on our text, the substantive due process requires that the rules or policies be fair in and of themselves. And we knew that based on the handbook, all those were laid out already. So we're in agreement that those were laid out for Bobby, those were there for the teacher and everything. For the procedural due process, that requires that, that the policies and the rules and regulations be carried out in a fair manner. And based on our team members, when we were discussing, we thought that Miss Barton, Jane, she never followed this. So this is where the problem lies. And this is where the court case and everything can come up because she did not do that. All right, so we're gonna look carefully at, these are some actions that we thought the principal could have done. One is to really meet with the teacher. We wanna find out is, based on the conversation in the first group, we knew that she's a veteran teacher. She knows, she's experienced. So we are assuming as a team that she should have known the grading policy, but as a principal, one thing he could have done is maybe meet with her and said, let us see what's going on. Because we know you break the law. We're not going to back you. I am in agreement with everybody that says that, you know, supporting her for the wrong that she has done, that's totally wrong. So we know that she was wrong. It was unethical what she did. Doing over 50% of the score, that was way off. We know that she did some illegal practices too. So we wanted to kind of hear her side of the story and to kind of say, why was only just one assignment counted for more than Bobby's grade? So those are some things we thought that the principal could have done. Maybe review the grading policy with her too by saying, you know what, I know you're a veteran teacher. You're not the only one in that department, but what about your other colleagues? Are they doing that? Kind of dig deeper to kind of see if it's something she's been doing all along. What about maybe other kids, things like that we were thinking about. We know that based on according to the 115C 288 rules and duties of principal, we know that the principal has the ultimate decision for the grade, right? So the principal could override her grade or he could accept it and so on. So those are some things that he could, you know, approach her as a teacher by saying, you know what, this is not right. I'm gonna not let you do this and things like that. In order to address the parents, one of the due process that we always say for parents to have the rights and students have rights is to meet with them. You know, we want to have that opportunity for where parents can have a say. That's the time that the parents will say, you know what, or the principal can say, this is what happened. These are what, based on the handbook, and the kid can do a written statement and, you know, just to talk on his side too. So we were thinking about maybe some restorative practices, maybe look at other data for Bobby, maybe his previous grades to kind of see how can we help him moving forward, or review the handbook, as I said, as a principal when you meet with the parent and the student. We said earlier that the parents made the principal made the final decision about his grade. And it doesn't matter if Bobby's uncle is on the board or he has a family member that has, you know, power or in politics. We as administrators or principals, one of our personal ethical, I guess, stand is to always uphold the law. It doesn't matter if somebody's or family members, or we know somebody, but the ethical principle is to always follow the law. It doesn't matter who. So we think right is right and wrong is wrong. Even when it comes on to the teacher, we can also say, you know what, you made a mistake, or maybe it could be, willfully, or you didn't know, but this is how you can go moving forward. Anybody wants to add anything? As a team member, are we good? All right, we're going to move on because we know we have other groups moving on. All right, and then we know that the student due process, again, communicating with everybody that is involved, meaning the teacher, the parent, the student. That is key, where we have to notify the parents, notify the students of the disciplinary action that is going to be taking place, and request a meeting with them to kind of, again, as I said before, talk this out and so on. Or we talk about provide opportunity for student to respond. So this is where the fair and the due process comes in. Instead of just say, you're not going to summer school, this is what you get, you have to sit out, we're going to bench you, we're going to do all these things. We want to give them that opportunity so that they can respond. And then we can collect data, written statements. I like what I think Dr. Wrangler said, is getting somebody again as maybe evidence, or somebody in addition to who is there. So with that meeting, maybe, have, the parent there to hear his side of the story. So you have somebody else in addition to just the principal to hear and to get to collect evidence and data. And then we know that we need an informal due process or a formal due process. And then in the end is we want to make sure that the due process is fair. It is a thorough process moving forward. Any question?
All right. If there are no questions, we're going to move forward. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to talk about the 4 ethical paragons. The first one is justice. Under justice, we want to make sure that there's fairness and equality, and that justice must prevail. There was no error in judgment with the evidence and the facts provided. We know that Bobby cheated. He admitted that he cheated. And so then he does have to suffer some type of consequence. However, we also have to look at the justice and the fairness and the equality as it relates to the amount of the weight that the teacher provided for the assignment, because is that just and is that fair? And we've already discussed it in terms of does the punishment fit the crime, so to speak. That's why it's so important that we do follow all the steps of the due process to ensure that justice is upheld. Also, something that I did not think about, but I just thought about, a lot of schools have also adopted redo policies for major assignments. So that may be something also that could have been taken into consideration. We're not familiar. We don't know what the policy was, but I know that at every school that I've been at for the last 3 schools that I've been at, it's a requirement. All teachers must have a redo policy. All right. So the next one is care. Under care, we have to be very careful as administrators, teachers, and school leaders, and how the decisions that we make and how they're going to affect other students. Because us as adults, we have to be adults. Kids are not going to look at something and say, hey, they are going to look at something and say, hey, this is what you did for Bobby, but when it was my turn, this is not what happens to me. So we want to make sure that we follow the due process. And then we also want to make sure that the decisions that we have, because ultimately it is the principal's decision, it is going to have an impact on the faith and the trust that all of our stakeholders have in us as administrators, and it will ultimately affect how our leadership is viewed. So we want to make sure that we are just and fair, and that we do follow and adhere to the policies and stuff and rules that we have in place. All right, the next one is critique. We are always under the microscope, so especially principals. We all have professional obligations that we have to adhere to and meet. And so principals will be critiqued on how they handle situations. Did they follow the law? Did they protect the rights of the students? Did they protect the rights of the teachers? Did they do what was in the best interest of the students? So when we're going through these process, doing all of this, one of the things that I found in researching and doing the research and finding out about the processes and stuff in my school is that we in my district and in my building, we already have all the rules and stuff are in place. If we follow them, then it'll leave us better off than if we don't follow them. So making sure that we adhere to the policies and procedures that are already in place for us to make sure that we're protecting the rights of everyone that's involved, including the students and especially our students, because they are like our biggest asset in education.
Yeah, they're the
next one is
clients.
professionalism. Yeah, they are clients. They are.
They are the clients.
And the next one is professional. Yep. The next one is professionalism. We know, just like you just said, Dr. Lamb, they're our clients, you know, and when kids walk across our thresholds, whether we're a teacher or whether we're a principal, one of the things that I do individually is I see when a child tells me that they want to be a doctor in life, and I look at the quality of work and stuff that they do in my class and stuff, I'm thinking, is this somebody's classroom, somebody's doctor office that I'm going to want to walk into in 4 years? And so it's our job to help guide them through this process and navigate to make sure that they become productive little citizens and stuff, and that they do achieve and sometimes realize the things that they can do that they didn't think that they could do, or even sometimes realize the things that they are doing they're not supposed to do. And then not only the children in the building, but sometimes even also the adults. And when we talked about, we went through teacher leadership and developing teacher leaders. In this particular case, the principal needs to always err on the side of being professional. And also his decision is going to affect what lessons are going to be learned. What lessons are going to be learned by not only Brandon, but all athletes in this case, and also the teachers as well, and how he handles this. So it's very important that he maintains an air of professionalism, because personally, this has been my battle for the whole time that I have been in education. I have constantly seen athletes get over because they're athletes, and then at the end of 4 years they've made the school look good, but then after graduation they're going to the house. They're not going to those D1 schools that they thought they were going to. So this one right here, I really had to step back and take self out of it and look at it from a professional point of view. All right, are there any questions regarding our 4 ethical paragons? Teammates? Okay.
All right, thank you. The takeaway here is pretty simple from this presentation. The heart of this is, is substantive versus procedural due process. Substance, again, is what does the policy say you're going to do? And then procedure is what do you do? Now, that sounds pretty simple to me. I'm not a very complicated person. It's pretty simple. And you say, well, Dale, why do you keep harping on that? This is the year of our Lord, 2021, the day, 17th day of February. The biggest issue in American society is substantive versus procedural due process, is the biggest issue in American society today. We have one group of protesters who is claiming or who is pointing out the fact that we're not asking for laws to be changed, the substance of law. We're asking how laws are enforced to be changed. We don't think it's a good idea. We think it's a little much that, that the penalty for a traffic stop for a taillight being out is being shot to death or being murdered, being killed. We think that's a little bit much. We think that's a highly capricious. While we have the other side of those people who think, well, they want to change the laws. They don't want any laws. No. The other side is asking that not that you change the law or the policy, but how you carry it out. The actual procedural piece of it is what we're saying needs some work because people are dying. That's the ultimate act of capriciousness. It's actually killing somebody. And so it's not as simple as it seems. We're belaboring the point here because we can't even get it right on the big stuff in our society. So the argument here is, what is the policy? What is the substance? But what you're asked to do every day, see, that's above your pay grade as a principal. Somebody else set those things, federal law, state law, local board policy. Your job is to make sure that they are carried out legally, ethically, morally. That's your job, not to decide whether you like them or not. And so what, and we can't decide if we like the kid or not. See, that's part of that, if we like it or not. But Latasha just made a good point. Too many times we go the other way with athletes, and that's what the beauty of this case study. In this case study, the athlete was treated capriciously. Latasha is absolutely correct. 95% of the time or more, they are treated arbitrarily. They're let off. They're not held accountable for their behavior or their academic success or lack thereof, unfortunately. So that's the irony, that's the twist in this case. But we have that same duty to make sure that those kids get what they're supposed to get as well. I go back again, and my argument is, short of physical or sexual abuse of a child, this is about as egregious as it gets to me. That you have so little care for this child, for children in general, or this particular child, that you would go to this extent, that you would go this far to break the law and throw your ethics and your morals out the window. Nothing you would do tomorrow would surprise me, and so I would try not to work with people like that. It might be Tilton Windmills. You're exactly right. It could be Tilton Windmills, but this would be one of those that I would tilt the windmill over. That's just me. All right, so let's move on. Great presentation. Whoever's next, I think it was Rachel. She's going to share her screen and we're going to roll on. Picking up steam now.
Okay, my name is Rachel, and my partner in this was Helen Davis, and there's just the two of us, and there always has just been the two of us, and we work really well together. But we kind of started by first just looking at what is relevant in terms of the due process in this case and what was not relevant in the terms of due process in this case. So first relevant, we felt like the assignment in question counted more than half of the student's final grade. That was very relevant in the case and one of the biggest issues. The teacher wished to assign a failing grade. The grading policy stated that cheating of any kind may require a failing grade by the teacher. Bobby admitted to the plagiarism, and we felt like it's the administrator's job, Tim's in this case, to make and administer the final decision on Bobby's grade because it is his role and responsibility. So those were the things, I guess, the tenets we were looking at when discussing due process with this case.
And then when it came to the non-relevant information, the things that we can automatically throw out the window that should not have any play in what the final decision may be, was that the teacher wants Tim to support her decision. Both Bobby and his mother signed the handbook and with the grading policy, who Bobby is related to and their role in the community, whose assignment Bobby copied, as well as Bobby's extracurricular involvement in baseball.
Excellent. I like that. I love that. I love that slide.
So then we looked at specifically due process and the grading policy and looked at how they actually intertwined together. And obviously at the very beginning, we see that this is capricious because the punishment was more severe than the rule allows for, stating that the failing would be failing of a course instead of necessarily just failing of one assignment and then given supplementary materials to make that up. We also felt like there needed to be open transparency regarding the current grading practices in Ms. Barton's class and support her in making necessary revisions that would fit state policies and North Carolina school ethics. And then moving about how the situation was handled with Bobby and his family, had the set expectations, the policies were as outlined in the handbook, and then looking, if needed, at historical data if this was a continuing trend within Bobby's school career.
And then in regards to the grading policy, it is the role of the principal that includes the responsibility of assigning the final grades. The grading policy used in the case was capricious due to the ambiguity of the wording because it was not clear and concise. Therefore, it left it open for translation. The guiding weight, as seen in Ms. Barton's class in regards to the assignment, goes against the state policy, which was exceeding the 10% maximum. And then finally, Bobby could fail the assignment with the possibilities of supplementary options, but not the entire course.
And then we talked about the responsibility roles within this case, both on the administrative level and then the teacher level, and talking about how, as an administrator, not only do you have your responsibilities towards Bobby and the other stakeholders, but also supporting the teacher in terms of helping her revise grading policies and make sure that she's upholding North Carolina ethics. So administrator should be aware of all course syllabi throughout the different courses available in their school. That's something that I feel like all administrators should have all syllabus, like all syllabi from their teachers. They should know how teachers weight out their grades within their grade book. They should be seeing their plan books. All of that just goes back to your responsibility of assigning the grades. You have to know that information. And we should hold all students and faculty accountable to high expectations and ethical standards in an unbiased manner. We should assist teachers in assuring all protocol and procedures meet all state and district policies. And we should ensure that all students are given due process in accordance to state and local guidelines.
All right, then as the teacher, in regards to responsibility, we went ahead and said, be ensured that you are in compliance with state or district policies in terms of grading or the category weights, syllabus, and standard course objectives, ensuring all students understand course and school expectations, utilizing tools such as checking for plagiarism with all students' work consistently, following proper steps when students break the code of conduct, as well as acting on behalf of the school and not acting on personal bias.
And we really felt like, and we wanted to know, did the teacher check all the other papers?
Mm-hmm.
Did she use did she use a tool to check for plagiarism? Or was it just, oh, I know this paper? And it was just Bobby's that she went and looked at. Because if you're going with that, then that changes it, because then is arbitrary, because she didn't check everybody's to see if plagiarism was involved. So we felt like that was a very big issue, which we felt also as an administrator, you could go and talk about, why didn't you check everybody else's? And then you get into the paradigms, and we looked at justice first. And as an administrator, it is your role and responsibility to ensure that all stakeholders are treated justly and are provided with an educational platform that meets all the guidelines of the law as it is written. Due process should be implemented to fidelity to listen and understand the student's perspective and decision-making. Parents should be part of all conversations. So there's always a story for everything that a student does. We may not agree with it. There's not excuses, but there are reasons. And so it's very important to understand those reasons to a child. And then, of course, zero tolerance policies have been removed by the law, according to North Carolina Justice Center, in order to safeguard students from discrimination. And this went against the zero tolerance policy.
As for paradigm 2, which covers care, as an administrator, we should be more concerned as to why Bobby, this is Booby, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
Why Bobby is not able to maintain and manage his course load as a student athlete. So that's more so looking at it from the social, emotional learn point, because of course we're there to nurture and educate the whole child, not just bits and parts. As support to the student, supplementary assistance should be provided, including but not limited to collaboration between stakeholders and course instructors to ensure Bobby is receiving interventions to foster better time management. Because if he was so busy that he did not do his paper, as to why that is the reason he plagiarized, let's go ahead and address it with putting those interventions in place. In regards to better time management, and of course, coping mechanisms for stress, because we all know when anybody's under any level of stress, the outcome is not usually what it needs to be. And then last but not least, as support to the teacher, because we always want to support our teachers as well. Overview of policies, particularly that of grading, should be reviewed and analyzed in cross-reference to current course guidelines. So I know like where I work, we sit down and we look at all of our syllabus together, and whoever the administrators of our department, she says, is that really what that should be? Or can you go ahead and say something else instead of saying you will fail? But then also where I am in the district, we do have that option where scholars do have the opportunity to redo an assignment, and a lot has changed, but it is still current. And as a teacher, it is your duty to actually make sure that you give the scholar the opportunity, or else you are not filling your duties.
And then with critique, as a school and community leader, we cannot have corrupt morals. The power of his family name and the relationships do not weigh in on the actions that he has made or the actions that we have to make in response to his actions. The incident in question was cheating. However, the assigned action the teacher was looking for was failure for the course instead of failure or reattempt for the assignment. And then failure for the entire course is extreme and unethical. While a failing grade for the assignment opposed to the entire course is a possible outcome, due process must always be forefront and all students treated equitably.
And then for professionalism, we understand that we are responsible for the student academic and social success, but in this case, we need to weigh the decision-making. As a principal, we uphold the code of honor, regardless of who you are. We have the best interests of the scholar and the teacher at heart. For the scholar, the lesson is that plagiarism is not necessary. It is about how you prioritize your time. As for the teacher, the grading policy needs to be clear, and at this moment, the scholar will fail the assignment, not the entire course.
Excellent. Y'all do work well together. That was very, very nice, very concise.
Thank you.
I've been asked a few times, Dale, why don't you go back in the case study and make it say, you know, the student may fail the assignment. There's a reason why. It says student may receive a failing grade, and I don't put on the assignment, and there's a reason why. Failing for the course is never an option on any assignment. That's understood. And one of the things we have to be careful about in the law is we can't anticipate every situation. So we can't establish it. If we didn't write it down, then then if you didn't tell me not to do specifically that, then I'm allowed to do that. The notion here is you have to understand and take some responsibility as a teacher to understand that you don't have the option to fail the kid, give a kid a failing grade over a assignment. You have to know that piece. And if you know the state grading code, then you know that that's not part of it. And so there's no ambiguity in the actual in what the policy says. But again, we can't write every policy for every eventuality. And if there's a policy on what grading is, then that covers that piece. And so the policy doesn't have to say can receive a failing grade on the assignment. It doesn't have to say that. That's the understood piece. Again, going back to English law, English common law. Again, what would a reasonable person understand? You're supposed to know the state code. Now, I like one of the things that y'all said here too as well. When you sat down as a department, I think Helen said this, and you look at your grading, you know, one of the things that we have to do is we kind of have to align the weight that we give individual things with how important they are with student learning outcomes. And when you say, well, that, you know, we just need to give this much. Well, then why are we doing that? See, that causes us to reflect on practice too. And so we're moving from law now to practice for a minute. But one of the things that I like about sitting down and what Helen was talking about and talking about how much should this be weighted, if it's only worth that little bit, why are we doing it? Especially if it's a time-consuming activity. It causes us, understanding the grading scale also causes us to reflect on practice. And that grading practice influences assessment, drives instruction. And so I'll get to the point. I inherited a world history teacher. No, excuse me, I'm sorry. I inherited a U.S. history teacher in high school. He spent all year long teaching the Civil War. Guess how many test questions there were on the end of course state exam in America, in U.S. history? How many questions were on the Civil War? Back then there was 2. Helen said 1. Yeah, 1 or 2 questions. So assessment, if you understand, when we start with grading policy and start looking at assessment and the value of assignments, we start looking at the actual value of assignments and what we're teaching and why we're doing these things. It leads us to that. That's the kind of conversation you need to have with teachers, not, you felt, you manipulated the policy. Did you not know? Well, obviously you knew, because we should be having those critical conversations about our assignment and how those assignments, those assessments drive our instruction anyway. We learned that last semester. I told you we wouldn't do any of that egghead stuff this semester. We'd just do law and finance. But remember, assessment drives instruction. So this speaks to that as well. And Helen and Rachel made a good point on that with this. Kudos. All right, who's next?
We would like to go
You
next.
go. All right, Cassandra's going next.
And Megan is going to share our presentation. And we'll
Excellent.
go.
All right, you don't have to review the specifics, just kind of get to the questions.
All righty, arbitrary versus capricious. So arbitrary, a rule is arbitrary if it is not supported by logic or facts based on individual preference or convenience. Capricious, a rule is capricious if it is without reason or irrational. The teacher seems to be arbitrary in this case because it is her preference. Hebe failed due to plagiarism, but her grading rubric is unfair and not supported, which is capricious. There are some in this situation that are trying to influence the principal one way or the other. The teacher wanted a failing grade, and others wanted a decision based on funding of baseball and exposure of students. Sorry, I didn't know my camera was on.
So our group really looked at the principal's course of action and the due process, whether it related to substantive, which is the process fair, and the procedural, is it applied fairly? So, we really kind of looked at the code of conduct, and it actually says may require a failing grade. So really in the end, it is based on what the principal wants to do and how they want to kind of address the situation. So it's really not as clear cut as the teacher is making it because of that wording. With the may fail. So we kind of said in the end, it's really the principal's discretion what happens. So they need to inform the student and notify all the parents and of the process, notify the supervisor if necessary. I do think in this case, it was appropriate for him to notify because of the outside influences and, kind of maybe some talk that they could have in the community with that piece of it. So I do think it was good for them to notify the superintendent, the principal notify the superintendent. But, if it was just kind of no politics involved situation, then, a lot of times it's just handled in-house and it doesn't need to go any farther than the principal. So, I do think that was correct. We all thought that was correct in the situation. So when you're interviewing the party with the teacher, why is one assignment worth half of the student's overall grade? So really trying to get to the bottom of that piece and why does this teacher not understand policy and fair grading practices? So really trying to understand that piece. And then Bobby's side, how is he prioritizing his duties as a student? So maybe have him work with the counselor. Again, I know another group talked, I think it was Rachel and y'all talked about the SEL piece. So really working with the counselor to help, again, with prioritizing organizational skills, that type of piece of it, to really help him kind of in school that way. And then I think, obviously we all said allow Bobby to complete the assignment again. I know in the past, you know, when we've kind of had a situation like this, we had it when CTE, when nursing fundamentals, we actually had the students complete the assignment again, but they had to have an added element. So they had to do a presentation piece. They had to present it to a panel of us, and, you know, again, they were wrong, and helping them understand that they were wrong and there are consequences for those actions. So again, they had that one extra little step, but it also helps their communication skills. So we're actually helping them build some of those 21st century skills out of it. So, so that's kind of the route that our group kind of took with the principal's course of action.
As it relates to the 4 ethical paradigms for justice, the teacher clearly, as Megan stated previously, was not in compliance with the district's grading policy. Having one of the assignments to count more than 50% of the overall grade is not just. This was also not equitable for the other assignments. As Dr. Lamb stated previously, like if it's only going to count 2%, what's the purpose of us doing this? Why are we even doing this if it's not going to count that much? And it also wasn't fair to Bobby or the other students in that class. The student code of conduct should be used as a guide when determining Bobby's consequences. And this should also be done to ensure justice as well. As it relates to care, Bobby's uncle, as we talked about, is well connected in the community. The superintendent appeared to be more concerned or to care more about the relationship with Bobby's uncle than ensuring that Bobby received consequences for the cheating. He made sure to mention that first, but he also shared with the principal, you know, to make sure that he made a good decision with that. But it was clear, you know, he wanted to remind him of who Bobby's uncle was as it relates to the community and his contributions to sports. I also under care, our group discussed that consideration should be given to Bobby, a little bit of grace. We talked about grace earlier as it relates, because he did admit it's not a situation where he lied and said that he didn't cheat. He told the teacher up front that he had and shared with her the reasoning behind using his older brother's paper, but the grading policy, I mean, was unfair. So our group really decided that that should also be taken into consideration as well.
Okay, under the paradigm of critique, corrupted morals were evident in this case study. Dean Larson was more concerned with the reaction of the president of the Chamber of Commerce rather than upholding the code of conduct. The superintendent did not advise Principal Davidson once he approached him about the situation to follow up substantive or procedural due process. Under the paradigm of profession, Ms. Barton maintained professionalism throughout the scenario. However, she did not do what was in the best interest of the student by abusing the grading policy. The superintendent and dean displayed a lack of professionalism for overlooking the potential moral and legal consequences of the decision-making. Not sure if the student's point of view matters under professionalism. However, although Bobby struck out with, you know, plagiarizing the assignment, he demonstrated accountability for his academic downfall. And Principal Davidson initially displayed a sense of ethical behavior upon the dean by reporting the issue. However, he began to question his morals and his values and ethics as he pondered the president of the Chamber of Commerce reactions.
And for our group takeaways, as actions that could be taken, as far as Tim, the principal, he did a good thing by communicating the difficult issues with the superintendent and asking for advice, or seeking advice. one thing that he could possibly do is speak with the baseball coach or the athletic director to see what is the problem with that. Bobby admitted to cheating and he didn't have time to do this project, which I'm quite sure he knew that the project was coming up and had more time and knew about the project. Maybe Tim, the principal, can look at possibly revising the schedule or putting something in place like a study hall period, so that student athletes or students who work can have that block or that period to work on assignments, since they don't have time after school due to the extracurricular activities or work. And we said that the principal needs to honor the policy that was withheld, printed in the handbook. Because if he doesn't, he could lose the respect of the staff members or community members. Jane, the teacher, some actions that she could possibly take a look at is assigning Bobby another project and average the 2 grades to get the final grade and replace the failing grade with that grade from the new project, or allow Bobby the opportunity to redo a whole new assignment or revise or add something to that existing assignment, like present the project to the Chamber of Commerce. The superintendent should support Tim's decision we had, and he should meet with Mr. Michaels and explain the issue and the final decision with the principal present as well. And Bobby, the student, should just be compliant of whatever alternative options for the project that's presented for him.
Excellent. Excellent. Again, we get into the again, the time. I had a teacher that taught all year long. He taught for 2 questions at the end of the year on the exam. One of the things we have to be cognizant of that this group brought up again, if this is a 20-hour project, it can only going to count 1 point. I mean, we've got to think about, what is this project and how long does it take? I mean, that you think it's worth more than 50% of the final grade, but we know that these collectively, all these out of class assignments, monthly, there's 10 of them, 10 months of the year, 10 of them, and they count 1 point each. Having something that would take 20 hours is not appropriate for the point value. We get back to that discussion as well with the teacher. We need to look at what is the content here. And I can tell you where that one got me when I was a middle school principal in the early 90s. Well, no, wait a minute. That was when I was at New Hope. That was 87. The flower babies. Anybody remember flower babies? Gosh, y'all were a young crowd. They use real babies now, but they used to give in middle and junior high. They used to give young people flower babies, a sack of flour, and you had to take care of it like a baby for a month, and not let it get wet or bust. Now they, it was an attempt to keep kids from having sex. Now, how it was, it was a birth control thing, really, was what it was all about. Was, that you aren't responsible enough to have children, so don't have premarital sex and get pregnant, kind of thing. But the whole flower baby deal that lasted a whole month and took up all this time and effort and energy and all those things, and it was worth hardly any points or whatever. We have to make some of those decisions. Now, in that case, the argument was there was a bigger picture here that what you were trying to teach these kids. And I said, well, wouldn't it be better just to have a class to tell them don't have sex or you'll get pregnant? And they said, well, we wish we'd thought of that. So it seems a lot kind of more shorter to the point to me, but what do I know? All right, who's next? We just have one group left?
I think it's us.
Brad.
Yes, we have been waiting patiently.
Good, you get to go first next time. You know that, right?
Works for us.
And see, I've been keeping a list in what order everybody goes and checking everybody off. So Brad's group gets to go first next time in 2 weeks.
All right. Oh, sorry. For some reason, it started at the. Okay. So in our group was Chris, Brian, and Sharina. So our first slide is just the brief overview part. Do you want us to go through this or you want us to keep on moving?
No, you don't have to go through that.
Okay. And this is basically what the policy states is to grade and classify the pupils and improve instruction and community spirit. And principal shall give the suggestions to the teachers for the improvement of the instruction.
All right, and first we're going to look at the substantive, procedural, and arbitrary and capricious. So obviously the substantive establishes the rights and policies that govern schools, and in this case, the teacher's grading policy is not fair, should be reevaluated, and the teacher's responsibility is to know the grading policy that's set forth by the district. Procedural refers to whether or not the procedure was followed and the right decision was made. So in this case, the teacher did not follow the correct policy, as the single grade counted more than half of the final. And then we have some details here of what can be done. The principal should meet with Ms. Barton, explain the grading policy, and also make it clear that it's her responsibility to uphold these procedures, especially as we talked about earlier, her being a veteran teacher. This is her responsibility as a classroom teacher. Then also the principal should send a notice to Bobby informing him of his infraction. And although he has already told his side of the story to the teacher, the principal should give Bobby another opportunity to explain himself, probably in writings for your documentation. And then at the bottom here with arbitrary and capricious, the political ties related to this infraction presents the risk of an arbitrary decision being made with the ties to Bobby's uncle working at the Chamber of Commerce. And again, with the capricious factor here, the consequences must be fair, consistent, and equitable for all students, regardless of their past. And in this case, the consequence was capricious.
All right, the principal's course of action, we believe that it's unethical for Bobby to fail the entire course because Ms. Barton's grading policy does not align with the district policy. When deciding on Bobby's consequence, we believe that Mr. Davidson should take a restorative approach and allow Bobby an opportunity to complete an alternative assignment. Mr. Davidson should meet with Bobby and Ms. Barton to obtain a statement in writing from each that explains the incident. Mr. Davidson should meet with Ms. Barton to explain her unfair grading policies and inform her that her assignment percentages need to be adjusted. Also need to reassure her that Bobby will face a consequence for cheating, but his consequence must be appropriate to the action. Ms. Barton will work with the data manager to ensure that grading policies and weights are updated. Mr. Davidson should arrange a meeting with Bobby and his parents to inform his parents of the incident and the consequence. As part of their rights, Bobby's parents have the right to appeal the consequence. And based off of district policy, cheating is considered to be a level 1 or level 2 offense. Therefore, Bobby will receive 2 days of in-school suspension and the opportunity to redo the assignment.
All right, the first paradigm is justice. Ms. Barton had reasonable suspicion that indicated a violation of handbook. This stands for the right to question a student.
Yep.
However, Ms. Barton's grading practice is not.
Hold on.
Oh, we're not getting this.
Yeah, sorry. I think Sharina's other laptop died, so she had to switch over to her other one.
Okay.
Sharina, are you there?
Yeah, can you, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you
Yeah, we can hear you
now. We can.
Great.
Okay, so the first paradigm is justice. Ms. Barton had reasonable suspicion that indicated a violation of the handbook. This gave her the right to question the student. However, Ms. Barton's grading practice is not fair, arbitrary, and capricious. Ms. Barton's decision was based on a personal choice that was unethical. An equitable decision must be made by Mr. Davidson to correct Ms. Barton's unfair grading practice and assign reasonable disciplinary action. Mr. Davidson should reevaluate every grading practice and ensure it is fair and aligned to the district's practice. They should avoid affecting his livelihood.
Okay, with the care paradigm here, this represents that school leaders must show care, concern, and connection with all stakeholders, and have a couple questions here that we should ask ourselves as school administrators. Who is likely to benefit from this decision, and what are the long-term effects of this decision? So in detail, Mr. Davidson must consider how the disciplinary action affects all those involved. So first of all, Bobby will not fail the class, but will be placed in ISS and asked to redo it. He should explain to Mrs. Barton that her concern for Bobby cheating is understood, but that her grading policy does not align with the school handbook. And then we cover that restorative justice piece again here, whenever we should consider the value of student achievement over the disciplinary action. And then ultimately, Bobby will be appropriately disciplined. He will have the opportunity for redemption, and Mrs. Barton's grading policies will be adjusted.
Okay, in regards to critique, intentional versus accidental plagiarism, Bobby admitted to plagiarizing his brother's paper, so this is intentional. In regards to social class, do the previous cases of plagiarism, do they involve those of different social classes? If so, if favoritism is shown because of Bobby's uncle and his influence in the community, this shows not only an ethical dilemma, but may result in a different lawsuit from previous cases. Could this be a possible case of nepotism, showing favoritism to Bobby because of his uncle's community status? And then incident offense type versus action type. Does the offense of plagiarism fit the action of failing him? What level of infraction does this fall under in the code of conduct policy? Does the word may in the grading policy give him an out per se? And was the proper procedure followed?
All right, and with profession, ability for the student academic success, we know Bobby cheated, he admitted it. So an appropriate legal consequence should be given. Even though the policy states that cheating of any kind may result in a failing grade by the teacher, it cannot be upheld in this situation since the teacher's grading criteria did not follow the policy. So in other words, we can't have zero tolerance if the policy isn't legal. So this is where that kind of comes into play. And then one thing that we suggest is that Principal Davison should meet with the entire faculty to make sure everyone understands that grading policies and procedures, because who knows, there could be other teachers in the building this is happening, and to hopefully save this from happening again, at least have a conversation with everybody. And then also consider forming over the summer a committee to reevaluate these policies and make sure that they are matching the district policies and everybody understands what the policies are on the district and state level for this situation. And that is it for us in a nutshell.
Great, thank you. I want to thank all of you for hanging around tonight. We'll go faster next time. I have a question, and if anybody knows the answer, just shout it out. What's the most punishment that a student can be given in school? A 1-year exclusion. That's the most. 1-year exclusion. Can you expel a student for good from school? That would be no. All right, even a kid shoots somebody in the hallway, you can only exclude them for 1 year. And what are they allowed to do at the end of that year? They can apply for readmission. So the most you can do is exclude a kid for a year. That's what happened to Bobby. But he didn't shoot a kid in the hallway. He cheated on him, take home assignment. All right, so even if Bobby had shot somebody in the hallway, we would have to do due process at the teacher level, the school level. The principal's decision for the year-long exclusion would be automatically appealed. You'd have a hearing, would go to the superintendent's office with the hearing, and then it would go to the board. Those 6 steps would have had to occur if Bobby had shot somebody on Fifth Avenue or in the hallway to get a 1-year exclusion. Bobby didn't get any of that. So that's the due process piece. In terms of the procedural piece of it. The substantive part, the teacher violated federal law, state law, local board policy in manipulating a simple out-of-class assignment to count more than half of the final grade. And so we failed on both ends. Excellent presentations. I like the one where you pointed out it was arbitrary and capricious. You know, did you check everybody's work? Did you put it through? Did you put everybody's work through Turnitin? No, just Bobby's. Those are the kinds of things. And so in the end, for me, this kind of speaks to the heart of who we are. Our job is to protect the powerless, to be the champion for the underdog. The whole notion of public education is to educate the great unwashed. You know, there was a question tonight on the news about why the federal law, you know, feds didn't mandate this or that for schools. The reporter's an idiot. Federal government doesn't run public schools. The preamble of the Constitution allows that states may provide for public education. That's why the feds can't mandate things, because it's a state by state issue, public education. But the whole notion of public education is to protect and promote and to give those the least in our society an opportunity, to give them a chance. And that's at the very heart of what our business is about. And we can't allow a kid to be treated this way, whether he's the best kid in the building, the worst kid in the building, comes from the best family or the worst family. None of that should matter ever. And that you have to, you know, that in loco parentis that we talked about on the financial response, the tort liability, you're there in place of the parent. You're there to protect these children. You're there to protect people who can't protect themselves. And I considered what this teacher did as predatory as sexual or physical abuse of a child. This is, in my opinion, just as predatory. It's exactly what we can't have in our business. It's exactly what we can't have in our business. We have no business putting people in classrooms that would do this to a child. That's, you know, that's my personal feelings, but and of course that's supported in the law and the policy. So, all right, I'm gonna give our two principals a chance to close it up tonight. Dr. Maraglia, I'll start with you, and then Dr. Caton, you'll end us up.
I just want to say how much I enjoyed my first experience with case studies for 603. I think you all did a fantastic job. I think you all brought some different perspectives, which I really enjoyed. I learned some things tonight myself, and so I just really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for all the effort that you put in there.
Oh, absolutely. Great job tonight.
I'm going to kind of echo exactly what Dr. Maraglia said, is that I really enjoyed the presentations tonight. I get to also, you know, learn a couple things, but I also get to learn about you and see your personalities come out in your presentations, which is very nice because I don't really know y'all yet. So that's exciting as well.
It is. I get the benefit of getting to read their work and their discussion board posts, and you can click into discussion board and read their post as well.
Yeah.
Kudos on what a good job you're doing on your post. And as you know, I read everything you send me. And I comment back, and if you give me a personal example, I'll kind of run that through with my thoughts on that as well. I'm very pleased. The quality of the work on the OMA is great. Again, Brad, you know, he's zoomed to the top of the list. I pick out a couple things every week that when I read your responses in discussion board that catch my eye. You are a fantastic group. I'm not telling you that, you know, I don't tell everybody that. But you are, and you know that you do great work. But I loved your presentations tonight. I was so pleased that nobody, you know, had the idiot slide where I had to go crazy that said, you got to support the teacher because that's your job. No, that's not my job. That's not your job. We want to support and facilitate teachers. Our job is to protect children and to make sure that they learn. And when you get that, and we talked about it last semester about changing your lens, I won't just keep beating you up with that same old tired phrase, but this is part of it. You're there to make sure that they learn and that they're protected, and that's your job. Again, thank you. We won't go this long again. You know, next week we'll be back to the regular hour, but case studies take a little while, but I think there's value in it. And I appreciate your time, patience, attendance, and your presentations were great. I will see you next week. Everybody have a good week. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.